Management and the accountants who work with them need to be fully aware of the environmental cost that the company can incur and should be incurring in order to take care of the environment. Many products and services that are made or given by companies do impact the environment by way of the byproducts that they produce, etc. How those items are cleaned up or stored safely so that the environment is not impacted in a negative way. You guys have most likely had the majority of your intermediate courses, and you understand about the types of things that need to be listed in your income statements as far as expenses go. You understand what needs to be disclosed on the balance sheet as far as liabilities, etc. go. And you also understand the types of information that needs to be disclosed within the notes to the financial statements. There are many movies out there that you guys could go and watch and consider the viewpoint from an accounting standpoint of what type of information may need to be recorded within those financial statements when it comes to environmental concerns and liabilities and the likelihood of future lawsuits. So think about those kinds of things. So management has got to be abreast of the information. There are numerous laws out there and therefore concerns. There have been many lawsuits. You guys could just Google some and listen and read to find out what is going on there. You can watch some videos on YouTube, news clips, etc. But companies have to be prepared on how to deal with and plan for their environmental impacts. Okay, so think back to what we have just seen about life cycle costing and life cycle budgeting. We also have to include the environmental cost, the cleanup cost, the storage cost, and if by chance we find out our product has some type of concern that we may be sued, then we're going to have to account for the contingencies of paying out those who have suffered due to our products. There are several laws that are in place. Your text briefly mentions the U.S. Clean Air Act and the U.S. Superfund Amendment and Reauthorization Act. I will advise you that the U.S. Clean Air Act and some other acts are covered in the CPA material. So you guys need to be prepared to understand that from an accounting standpoint, you need to know that these things are out there. These acts introduced tougher environmental standards, imposed stringent cleanup requirements, and introduced severe penalties for polluting the air and contaminating subsurface soil and groundwater. These environmental costs that are incurred over several years of the product's life cycle are often locked in at the product and process design stage. Managers in industries such as oil refining, chemical processing, and automobile manufacturing practice value engineering. They need to design their products and processes to prevent and or reduce pollution over the product's life cycle. Customer life cycle costing is also mentioned. Basically what you do is you can view the life cycle cost from the perspective of the customer. Okay, so focus on the total cost to be incurred by a customer. What is their cost to acquire the product that you're selling them? What is the cost that they are going to incur to use what you're selling them? Cost to maintain what you're selling them, and then finally their cost to dispose. Consider the Volkswagen fiasco that we've had here over the last couple of years, where it was the cars were reportedly more fuel efficient, etc., etc. Okay, so when the customers are thinking about buying that car, they are thinking about their reduced cost to use over their life cycle that they're going to be using that automobile. All right, so that's one of the reasons why Volkswagen's having to shell out billions of dollars to those consumers because basically we had some false advertising and that value was lost by the customer, and therefore they're having to be indemnified by Volkswagen. All right, so it influences the prices that a company can charge the customer for the product or service. Basically, Volkswagen had to issue a refund, right? Non-cost factors and pricing decisions. These are some things that you all also need to be aware of as the accountants. Again, many times you guys are being exposed to material in your courses that your fellow students may or may not see. Okay, so consider that when it comes to working with management. These items are also discussed on the CPA material and the CMA material. So we have some non-cost factors and pricing decisions. In many cases, it's not a major factor in setting prices, but we do need to take a look at things that can influence our price setting. So, price discrimination, the practice of charging different customers different prices for the same product or service. Basically what we're talking about is the demand from different types of markets. Your textbook goes into basically discussing how the airlines are able to discriminate between business travelers who get a cheaper fare and, have a higher fare, and tourist travelers who have a cheaper fare. You guys should recall from your economics class sensitivity to pricing, right? So business travelers are insensitive to their price that they have to pay in order to make their business flights. And they typically fly during the week and come back during the week. They're insensitive to the price and they absolutely have to have the ticket. All right, versus those tourist travelers, they're typically flying and many times they will stay over a weekend or over a Saturday night. So the airlines are kind of able to discern who's a business traveler and who's a tourist traveler by whether or not they stay over on a Saturday night. So if the Saturday night is included in the time the person has gone to the destination, is going to return after Saturday, then they're getting the cheaper pricing of the ticket. All right, so the travelers typically are more sensitive to the pricing. And again, they're able to do this. It is not something that is illegal based on how things are done in the airline industries and some others. Think back to the price elasticity. Hopefully your economics teacher described the price elasticity as a rubber band being stretched. There comes a point where somebody is not going to pay more than a certain price for that ticket or for that service. Okay, so price elasticity of demand. The book talks about in the wake of 9/11 that even the business travelers did not want to fly, and the airlines actually did suffer. They reduced the prices even for the business travelers in order to try to stimulate ticket sales, but they did suffer losses or reduced revenues for the year after that 9/11. I would like to know how it's going for the airlines in 2016 for all of the tourists who may not be selecting to travel to Europe in the wake of all the things that have occurred in France and Germany and elsewhere. There are some legal implications, so you really do need to run everything by legal to make sure that your company is not doing something that is illegal when it comes to price discrimination. But again, it's got to be viewed in certain ways. Peak load pricing is the practice of charging a higher price for the same product or service when demand approaches the physical limit of the capacity to produce that product or service. Hotels is an excellent example of these. When demand is high and the production capacity or the supply capacity is limited, customers are willing to pay more in order to get the product or service. So imagine the downtown Chattanooga hotels during the week of Riverbend. Everybody that's from out of town wants to be within walking distance of Riverbend, right? So can you imagine what's going on with the pricing for the downtown hotels during that time? Peak load pricing occurs in such industries as the telephone industry, telecommunications, not just hotels, car rentals, and also electric utility industries. If you guys happen to be an EPB customer here in the area, you guys can actually go onto their webpage, log in with your utility account information, and go and look at your use of electricity on an hourly basis. It's quite interesting to go and look at what your home is consuming during certain points of the day. Peak load pricing, especially in industry, if you work at a particular company, for example, some type of manufacturer in the Chattanooga area, peak load pricing is something that has to be dealt with. When we're talking about the summer hours and everyone in town's running those air conditioners full blast, peak load pricing comes into play. That's because demand far exceeds capacity, and peak load pricing is what companies do to increase their profits. In regards to peak load, if you guys happen to know anybody that lived in the Atlanta area during the Olympics, you should ask them if they or anyone that they knew actually rented out their home during the Atlanta Olympics. There was literally a shortage of places to stay, and people would literally rent out their houses and then go and stay with their own families that lived elsewhere. So, for example, had an aunt and uncle and many people in their neighborhood rented out their homes, and then they would come up to Chattanooga or elsewhere and stay with their families while they rented their houses out. International pricing is another example of factors other than cost that affect prices. Occurs when the same product is sold in different countries. All right, so prices are different in different countries. They vary much more than the cost of delivering the products to each country. These price differences arise because of differences in the purchasing power of consumers in different countries. This is a form of price discrimination. There are also some government restrictions that may limit the prices that companies can charge in other countries. It would be interesting to spend some time digging into this, for example, in the pharmaceutical industry. You can read in the newspapers or watch on the news programs that there is many times a great difference in the price that we pay here in the U.S. for prescription drugs versus what they pay, for example, in Canada or Mexico for the exact same drugs that many times are manufactured by American companies. Antitrust laws and pricing decisions. These are some other items that you may see covered in the CPA and CMA materials. There are legal considerations that also affect pricing decisions, and companies are not always free to charge whatever price they like. So price discrimination is illegal if the intent is to lessen or prevent competition. All right, so there has to be intent, which can be difficult to prove in a court of law. And then predatory pricing occurs when a company deliberately prices below its cost in an effort to drive competitors out of the market and restrict supply, and then raises prices later rather than enlarge demand. Predatory pricing is covered under the Sherman Act, the Clayton Act, and the Federal Trade Commission Act, and the Robinson-Patman Act. Again, for sure, the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act I have seen in materials for the CPA exam, so you guys might should dig into those a little bit further to understand what's going on there. You guys could Google China and predatory pricing and see what all you can find there. You could also Google China and find out what kinds of things have been going on as far as dumping goes. Dumping occurs when a non-U.S. company sells a product in the United States, for example, solar panels, at a price below the market value in the country where it is produced. And this lower price materially injures or threatens to materially injure an industry in the United States. Dumping cases have occurred in the cement industry, computer industry, lumber, paper, semiconductor, steel, sweater, and tire industries. It is an occurrence that happens quite frequently, and many times the Chinese are perpetrators of it. Besides the dumping and the predatory pricing, there have also been numerous stories regarding how the Chinese manipulate their currency, which also, of course, affects the global economy and trade. Collusive pricing is our last topic. It occurs when companies in an industry conspire or collude in their pricing and production decisions in order to achieve a price above the competitive price and so restrain trade. So in other words, they're working together to jack up the selling price, which of course increases everybody in that industry's net income. But the consumers or customers of those particular companies are the one who is paying more than their fair share for the product. I'm going to stop this video with a clip of a movie that I recommend that you guys watch. It stars Matt Damon, and it is in regards to a fiasco that happened, literally a true story, about Archer Daniel Midland and a couple of other companies that colluded together in how they were going to have pricing to such companies as Coca-Cola and others. I actually was at a certified fraud examiner's meeting back in 2012, and the person that this movie is about, that Matt Damon portrays, was one of the speakers there. And it was interesting to find out that he actually perpetrated a fraud after this happened to occur, and he had to go to jail. And while he was in jail, companies such as Coca-Cola stepped up and took care of his family while he had to go to jail to serve for fraud. So it was interesting that Coca-Cola actually stepped up to the plate and took care of somebody, because he really did do companies such as Coca-Cola a massive favor by turning in his own company and other companies into the Department of Justice and the FBI, etc. So let's watch this clip here.
What I'm about to tell you, it involves something very large.
Everyone in this country is a victim of corporate crime by the time they finish breakfast.
Yes. Things are going on I don't approve of. I mean, I feel real bad about that.
Corn goes in one end and profit comes out the other.
Weird, right? It's not just lysine, it's citric, it's gluconate. There was a guy who left the company because he wouldn't do it. He was forced out. The gluconate guy, he's out of a job.
Would you be willing to wear wire? We need your help.
7:30 a.m. I am approaching the entrance to the office.
Good morning, Liz Taylor, secretary.
You don't really need to narrate the tapes for us when you're making them. Just
Not a problem.
once it starts, it is going to be intense.
What is he doing?
I told him the camera was in the lamp.
No. No.
How about this guy, Whitaker? The guy's making $350,000 a year, and he turns informer. When does that happen?
Mark Whitaker, secret agent 0014.
Why 0014?
Because I'm twice as smart as 007.
Oh, no.
They will make me the next president of ABM.
How can you possibly stay there when you've just taken down the company?
Because they need me to run the company.
That's completely illogical.
Mark showed you that 4 white guys in suits getting together in the middle of the day. That's not a business meeting, it's a crime scene.
There's something you're not telling us.
Why would I hide anything from you guys?
We're going to find out what's going on, Mark. FBI.
What the heck is going on here?
Whitaker, would you please come with me?
Oh, yeah, I was good, right? Didn't I seem really scared? Listen, I actually felt scared.
I want you to keep this secret. Absolutely. Don't tell us anything.
It's very important in case you not discuss this with anyone else.
I'm a person of interest in an ongoing investigation.
Oh my God.
You guys still think I'm going to be okay at the company, right? I mean, you guys are going to take down the bad guys, but I'll be okay, right? This thing.
Well, I think the corporate culture is going to change a little bit for you.
so. Listen, I haven't been telling you guys the whole truth, but I'm going to clear that up in there today.
What?
Look, we got to get you out of here.